Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah Shabbos. We're up to Perek Chaf Aleph, chapter 21, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah 1. I dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shalamas Rabinowitz, Shalamas Pastor Rav Yaakov Eliezer. Okay. Noitel Adam Espenoi V'Evan B'Yadai. One can pick up his son with a stone in the hands of his son, the Kalkala V'Evan B'Seich, and a basket with a rock in it. Now, we've learned previously a law that if, let's say, in a regular case, you leave something muktzah on top of something. So although the thing you left it on top of is not muktzah, but what's under, what acts as a base for the muktzah, becomes a muktzah also. Now, now there's also another halacha that, we cannot move muktzah, which means, something muktzah, you take with your hand and move it. But then the question is, what about indirect movement of muktzah? Or let's say you move something not muktzah, which makes something muktzah move. You actually handled something that's not muktzah, but meaning your direct handling is something not muktzah, but by handling the not muktzah item, you move a muktzah item. By moving one, you move the other. So when you land at moving the muktzah item, it's indirect. But the halacha is that you can only move something like that muktzah indirect if you're really moving it for the purpose of what's permissible. So let's say, for instance, right, you've got something that you need, it's permissible. There's something muktzah next to it. If I take the thing that's not muktzah, that will cause the muktzah thing to move. But why am I doing this? Because I want the non-muktzah thing. I'm not doing it for the muktzah thing. Then it's okay to do. But let's say there's something muktzah and I want to move it. So how do I move it? I move a non-muktzah thing that causes the muktzah thing to move. But why am I doing it for the muktzah thing? That I'm not going to do. So indirect movement of muktzah for the muktzah item I may not do. Indirect movement of a muktzah item for a non-muktzah item is permissible. So now we have a story like this. This kid is holding a rock. The rock is muktzah. Okay? Now, he wants his father to pick him up. And we're talking about, and it's very interesting because I don't know if this is a case of a child who really very much yearns for his father. And if the father doesn't pick him up, we're actually concerned about the child getting ill. That's the situation. We're actually concerned about the child getting ill. And therefore, you need to pick up the child. But the child's got a rock in his hand, right? Got a rock in his hand. Now, you'll say, okay, well, when I pick up the child, I'm handling the child. I indirectly move the rock. I'm doing it for the child, right? So what should be the problem? The answer is, it's not as simple. Because you want to move the rock too. Because if you try to get that rock out of the kid's hand, what's the kid going to do? He's going to scream and shout.
I'm not going to let you go.
He's going to scream and shout. So the point is here that you actually, primarily I want to hold the kid, the child, but I want that rock too. So if not for the fact that the Chachamim said, okay, in this case where the child yearns for his father so much that if the child if he doesn't pick up the child's going to get ill. Although you want to move the rock too, since you're not directly moving the rock, you're picking up the child who's holding the rock, you're allowed to do it. And not only that, when you pick up the child, should you try to shake it out of his hand? Make him drop it? And the answer is, if he's going to scream and shout, nope, you don't have to. You can, being that again, the child needs to be picked up. And if you make the child drop the rock, he's going to scream and shout, which I'm not sure if that is also a problem of causing him to be ill or just under these circumstances, we don't make you go so far because you could pick him up anyway. But the point is that you can pick up the child that's indirectly moving the muktzah. Although typically when you want to indirectly move the muktzah, you can't do that. In this case, for the child who will get ill if you don't pick him up, you're allowed to do it. And you don't have to shake the rock out of his hand because if you do, he's going to make a big fuss about it. If he won't make a big fuss about it, fine. But if he's going to make a big fuss about it, you don't have to go ahead and make him shake the rock out of his hand.
Because you don't really want the rock.
Yes, you do. You also want the rock. In case, put it this way, if the kid is not going to let go of the rock, this is his toy, right? And you don't have to scream and shout, then you do want the rock. That's called also wanting the rock.
Only for that purpose.
Whatever, you want the rock right now. But since if you don't pick up the child's going to get ill, so therefore we say you can pick him up. Okay. Now, the next case is in a basket with a rock in it. Now, the basket with the rock would seem to be a classic case of what we said before. The rock is muktzah. The basket is a base for the rock. So how can you move it? So therefore, the commentaries say, the Bartanura says, that the case here is that this rock is not just sitting in the basket. There's a hole in this basket, and the rock is filling up the hole. So the rock is actually part of the basket. It's making the basket functional. So when the Mishnah says you can move the basket with the rock, it means where before Shabbos, the rock set into the hole, and it's tight into the hole, which means when Shabbos began, it was part of the basket, you're allowed to move the basket. Now, the Mishnah continues, Truma that became impure can be carried together with pure truma or with chulin, regular non-consecrated food. So truma is, from your grain, you have to separate a certain amount of the grain for the Kohen. And only the Kohen is allowed to eat it. Now, although if you're not a Kohen, you have no usage for truma, but since a Kohen can eat it, it's food. And therefore, it's not muktzah. But if the truma becomes tameh, becomes impure, comes to the contact with a source of impurity, now the Kohen can't eat it. The only thing he could do with it is use it for fuel. He could burn it and use it for fuel. But on Shabbos, he can't do that. So it comes out even for truma tameya should be muktzah because no one can use it for anything. Okay, so let's say you have a basket that has tahar truma in it, pure truma, and impure truma in it. So it's carrying both. Or let's say it's impure truma with non-truma food, regular food. Okay, so one I'm allowed to carry, and one I'm not allowed to carry. And they're both in the same basket. Can I carry it? And the answer is yes, you could. Because when you have both a muktzah item and a non-muktzah item together in somewhere, and we can consider the non-muktzah item, the movable item, more important, more significant, then we say that you follow the more significant and you can carry the basket with both of them in. Being that on Shabbos, the truma that's tar, or the regular food, has usage, you can eat it. The other food, you can't do anything with it. So the food that you can eat is considered more significant than the food that you can't eat, even though it's truma. And we say you can carry the basket with both of them. If you have something as a base, for something that is muktzah and something that's not muktzah, and we see the non-muktzah item is more important because you can use it on Shabbos, then we say it's considered a base primarily for the non-muktzah item, and you can carry it. And when you're carrying the muktzah, that's indirect. Okay. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda now comes on to a different case, and what it means like this: you can even lift out from the mixture of 1 to 100. So here's the rule: if you have truma, and truma gets mixed up with non-truma, so in order to apply the law of bittul, of nullification, to say that the majority nullifies the minority, and the minority doesn't count anymore, you're allowed to treat it like the majority. So by truma to do that, you have to have a ratio of 100 of non-truma to 1 of 100. It's a ratio of 100 to 1 to nullify. You typically don't need that much, but that's the law by truma. You need 100 to 1. You need 100 to 1, 100 non-truma to 1 truma to nullify the truma. Even after you nullify the truma, you still have to now remove from this pile the original amount of truma that should have gone to the Kohen, because we want to compensate him for his loss. He lost out on the truma. So although we don't have the original truma anymore, but to compensate him for the loss, truma was value to him. It meant it had a value to him, and he lost that. we compensate him by doing what? We take out from the pile and we give him what originally fell in. So now the question is, can you do that on Shabbos? Can you take out that one part, right, that allows you now to eat this pile? Because until you take it out, you can't eat it. So you have to separate the amount that's supposed to go to the kohen for I can eat from this mixture. Can I do it or not? So now we got to take one step back. Can you, if let's say you have a pile of tevel, that means a pile of grain that you need to 100% without question separate truma from, and the other separations that you make. When you have a pile of grain like that, that's called tevel, and it's forbidden to eat. Can I on Shabbos, can I make my separations of the truma and everything else from the pile to be able to eat it on Shabbos? The answer is no. Why not? Because by taking this grain that was forbidden to eat and now making it permissible, it's like I fixed. It's similar to fixing a utensil.
Oh, for that reason.
Yeah, it's similar to fixing a utensil, and therefore the sages said you can't do it. So now does the same thing apply in this case? I have this mixture of the truma and the meiser. Okay, I have 100 to 1. I'll be able to eat from this, but I have to first separate the amount that fell in originally to give to the kohen, and that's when I can eat it. So can I do that on Shabbos or not? So Rabbi Yehuda says I can do it. I can actually lift up the amount that goes to the kohen to compensate him for his loss from the mixture of 1 to 100. Why? I'm fixing, am I not? So Rabbi Yehuda makes an argument like this. The argument starts like this. Let's say you have this mixture, right? Mixture of 100 to 1, nullified, but you need to go ahead and you have to separate the original amount that goes to the kohen before you can eat from it. Let's say I don't physically separate it, but I say that part in the pile over there, I specify an area, a part of the pile over there, that's going to the kohen. I designate that to go to the kohen. So according to the halacha is, I can now eat from the rest of the pile, even though I didn't physically separate it. But if I designate it, that means I separated it. That's the truma. That goes to the kohen, and everything else I can eat.
You can tell the difference.
You know the difference. You designated over here. You're going to stay away from over there. Now, so therefore, Rabbi Yehuda makes the following argument. Being that I don't have to actually lift it out to do it. I don't have to actually lift it out to do it. I could have just designated. And that would have been fine. That'd be fine to fix it. And apparently that'd be fine to fix it on Shabbos like that. If I just say it's not that recognizable, I think it actually would work. But now I'm doing more. I'm doing an act. I'm not just designating, I'm doing an act. So Yehuda argues, look, I don't need the act to fix it. I could just designate it if I wanted to. So now when I do an act to fix it, that act is not seen as such a significant act of repair. Because I don't need this act. I can do it without the act. So even now when I do it with the act, my repair is not considered such a significant repair to say, okay, this is like repairing something and we don't let you do it on Shabbos. Therefore, Yehuda says that you could actually lift it, you could actually take the truma part out of the mixture. And we say it's not a problem. Now you may wonder, well, if that's an argument, let's make the same argument, not by the mixture case, but by the tevel case. By the case where we actually have grain that's tevel, you must make the separations from it. Otherwise, it's unquestionably forbidden. Let's make the same argument. I can fix that. I can separate truma the same way. I can designate a part before I physically separate and give it to the kohen and eat from the rest. So maybe I should always be able to separate truma on Shabbos with the same argument. The answer is there's a difference. Tevel is absolutely forbidden, right? When the tevel becomes tevel, which means at a certain point of processing the grain, it becomes tevel, it becomes a non-kosher item. So now if I fix that, that's a significant fixing. And no matter how I do it, and therefore if I actually separate it, even though I could have gotten away with it another way, but look what I'm doing. I'm making something prohibited become permissible. That's fixing. You can't do that on Shabbos. But meduma, which is forbidden because it's a mixture. The two things originally were okay. I had truma that was okay for the Kohen. I had the other stuff that's okay for me. And then it got mixed together. It's the mixture that makes the problem. That's not such a serious level of prohibition to say that when I didn't need the act, it's not such a significant act of fixing, and I'm allowed to permit it on Shabbos. Because since it's not inherently forbidden, it's basically forbidden because there's a mixture of forbidden in here. That's not such a severe level of prohibition to say, oh, no matter what, that's fixing. When it's already at a lesser level of prohibition, and I don't even need the act to take off the prohibition, the act is therefore not considered so significant to forbid it. So I just gave you a whole explanation about Rehuda's opinion, but guess what? That's not the halacha. The halacha is like the first opinion that you may not even separate from the mixture the portion of the Kohen on Shabbos. You can't even lift it. You can't do it. You can't lift it up. Yes, I hear your argument. Yeah, you could have done it without it, but that's not enough of an argument. At the end of the day, this is how I'm fixing it, and it's getting fixed. That's similar to fixing. You can't do it on Shabbos. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
In other words, it's cute, but it doesn't work.